There comes a moment in every relationship when silence speaks louder than words. When your absence becomes the very thing that echoes in her mind. You see, when you stop contacting her not as a game, not as punishment, but as a decision rooted in self-respect, something remarkable begins to happen. A woman begins to feel the space you once filled. She notices the quiet where your laughter used to live, the stillness where your attention once offered warmth. It's in this silence that reflection is born. The psychology of absence is one of the most profound and misunderstood forces in human connection. When a man decides to step back, to stop contacting a woman, something shifts on a deep psychological level, not only within her but in the space that once connected them. Communication is the invisible thread that maintains emotional closeness, and when that thread is temporarily cut, the mind reacts with curiosity, confusion, and reflection. Human beings are wired to notice what's missing. The absence of your messages, your voice, your energy creates a void, and the brain instinctively tries to fill that void with meaning. For a woman who may have grown accustomed to your presence, the sudden quiet stirs something within her, it awakens her awareness. She begins to reflect on the connection, replaying past moments, analyzing interactions, and trying to understand what changed. In relationships, we often underestimate the power of space. When you constantly reach out, your presence becomes predictable, and predictability, while comforting, can dull emotional intensity. Absence, on the other hand, introduces contrast, it disrupts the rhythm and invites curiosity. A woman begins to feel the tension between what was and what is now. This tension is not always comfortable, but it's deeply transformative. It pulls her attention inward and makes her question how much your presence meant to her. This process isn't about manipulation or creating anxiety, it's about allowing emotional distance to do what words sometimes can't: reveal truth. Psychologically, this absence engages what's known as the Zeigarnik effect, the mind's tendency to fixate on unfinished experiences. When communication suddenly stops, the mind struggles to close that emotional loop. She wonders why the contact ended, whether you lost interest, or whether she played a role in your withdrawal. These unanswered questions make her reflect on her own emotions more deeply. She starts to appreciate what she once overlooked, recognizing the subtle value of your consistency and presence. This moment of absence also creates emotional recalibration. The human heart often needs distance to feel closeness again. When she no longer has access to your attention, she begins to perceive it as something meaningful rather than guaranteed. It's in this silence that gratitude begins to grow. Your absence transforms from emptiness into a mirror that reflects her true emotional investment. She begins to see whether her attachment was born from genuine connection or from the comfort of attention. The psychology of absence reveals that sometimes, stepping away doesn't break connection, it strengthens it by forcing both people to see its real depth. The dance of desire is an intricate rhythm built not on constant closeness, but on the ebb and flow of presence and absence. When you stop contacting a woman, you don't just disappear from her daily life, you alter the tempo of the emotional dance between you. Desire thrives in contrast. It needs both closeness and space, both warmth and distance. When everything becomes too available, too predictable, the tension that fuels attraction begins to fade. But when communication pauses, that tension returns. She starts to feel the pull of mystery again, the unspoken question of what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and whether the connection still holds its spark. This uncertainty, while uncomfortable, is the very heartbeat of desire. It stirs her curiosity and makes her re-engage emotionally, not because she is forced to, but because her mind and heart begin to crave what they can no longer easily access. When you were consistently reaching out, the energy was imbalanced. One person was doing the chasing, while the other had the luxury of reacting. But when you step back, you shift that balance. Suddenly, she is no longer the one being pursued, she is now faced with the stillness that comes when the pursuit ends. This space allows her to feel what she couldn't when you were always there. It brings to light whether she truly desires you or simply became comfortable with your attention. In this silence, her emotions begin to move differently. The yearning she once suppressed under familiarity or complacency starts to resurface. That subtle ache of wanting returns, and with it, a renewed sense of appreciation for what you brought into her world. Desire, by nature, needs room to breathe. It cannot survive in constant exposure. The pause you create by withdrawing communication gives the emotional field a chance to reset. It invites anticipation, and anticipation is the soil where attraction grows. When she no longer knows when or if you'll reach out, she begins to feel the magnetic tension that once defined your early connection. The imagination fills the gap that words used to occupy. She starts to replay old conversations, relive memories, and wonder what might come next. This mental engagement reignites emotional intimacy in a more powerful, organic way than constant communication ever could. In the dance of desire, distance is not the absence of love but the return of polarity. It's the space that allows two people to rediscover each other not through effort, but through the natural pull that exists between them when both are free to feel the weight of wanting again. The mirror effect begins when you stop contacting her, and suddenly the reflection she once avoided becomes impossible to ignore. In your silence, she no longer has you to respond to, no one to mirror her emotions back to her, and so she is left to face herself. The dynamic that once revolved around your communication shifts inward, forcing her to sit with the emotions that your absence brings to the surface. It is a quiet confrontation, one that doesn't happen through words but through the uncomfortable stillness of space. Without your messages, calls, or gestures of reassurance, she starts to ask questions she didn't before, questions about what she felt, what she wanted, and what she truly valued in the connection. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects not your indifference, but her unacknowledged emotions. This reflection often exposes truths that were hidden beneath comfort and routine. When you were always present, she could deflect responsibility for how she felt by focusing on your behavior, whether you texted enough, cared enough, or gave enough. But when you stop reaching out, there is no longer an external figure to project those feelings onto. The absence of your contact leaves her with the raw material of her own emotions, forcing her to process them without distraction. This process can be unsettling because it reveals vulnerability. She begins to notice the ways she may have taken your presence for granted, or how much emotional dependence she had built around your consistency. The quiet becomes a teacher, showing her where she sought validation instead of connection and where she confused your attention with certainty. As she reflects, the mirror of your absence also begins to reveal her patterns of attachment. Whether she leans toward avoidance or anxiety, the lack of contact exposes the truth about how she relates to closeness. Some women may respond with withdrawal, convincing themselves they don't care, while others feel the sting of longing more deeply. Either way, the reaction is honest, because it's no longer filtered through constant interaction. She can no longer perform confidence or indifference when the silence calls for sincerity. This mirror doesn't flatter, it clarifies. It allows her to see whether she misses you or the comfort of your attention. In this quiet space, the emotional truth begins to surface. Your absence doesn't punish, it reveals. It gives her the opportunity to look inward, to recognize her own patterns, and to understand the depth of what your presence meant. Through this mirror, she meets herself as much as she meets the truth of what was shared between you. The power of self-respect becomes most visible not in what you say, but in what you choose not to do. When you stop contacting her, you communicate a message that runs deeper than words ever could. It says you understand your worth, that your energy is valuable, and that you refuse to invest it where it is not equally reciprocated. This isn't about pride or ego, it's about integrity. Self-respect in relationships is the quiet force that shapes how others treat you. When you withdraw from constant communication, you signal that your emotions are not up for negotiation, that you're not available at any cost. A woman senses this shift immediately. It changes how she perceives you, because self-respect carries a weight that demands recognition. It tells her that you no longer seek validation through her responses, that your sense of self no longer depends on her attention or approval. In relationships, we often mistake persistence for care, but sometimes persistence is the language of insecurity. The man who keeps chasing even when his effort is not matched ends up teaching the other person that his love is guaranteed, that his presence requires no effort in return. When you stop contacting her, you reclaim your emotional boundaries. You stop teaching her that she can have your energy without offering hers. That act of restraint, that decision to hold back instead of reaching out, becomes a statement of strength. It shows that you understand love is not about convincing someone to see your value, it's about being seen by someone who already does. Silence born from self-respect is powerful because it isn't cold, it's calm. It doesn't come from bitterness, but from clarity. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows they bring something meaningful to the table and refuses to diminish it through overexposure. A woman, when faced with this kind of energy, begins to feel the shift in emotional dynamics. The balance of power changes. She is no longer responding to a man who needs her approval, she is now facing someone who honors himself enough to walk away from one-sided effort. That kind of presence, even in absence, commands admiration. In time, this silence becomes magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who respect themselves, because self-respect radiates stability and strength. It creates an aura of certainty that is rare and deeply attractive. By not contacting her, you show that your peace matters more than your need to be chosen, and in that choice, you remind her that genuine connection can only exist between two people who both know their own worth. The shift of dynamics begins the moment you stop contacting her, because energy in relationships is never static, it's always moving, always responding to balance or imbalance. When you were the one consistently initiating, pursuing, or maintaining the connection, the flow of energy was directed outward from you to her. She may have become accustomed to that rhythm, comfortable in the knowledge that your presence was guaranteed. But when you withdraw that energy, everything changes. The balance tilts, and the connection that once relied on your effort begins to demand her awareness. This is the point where she starts to feel the weight of your absence. The emotional current reverses, and she begins to sense the effort it once took for you to keep things alive. That realization alone can be powerful enough to awaken a new kind of respect, or at the very least, curiosity about what she might have overlooked. Human connection thrives on balance, and imbalance always reveals itself when one person steps back. Your decision to stop contacting her forces a natural recalibration. Without your messages or calls, the space between you opens up, and she is left to decide whether she wants to step into it. This shift doesn't just affect her, it affects the entire emotional tone of the relationship. The dynamic moves from one of pursuit to one of reflection, from reaction to response. You are no longer the one driving the interaction, and that change subtly places the power of choice back in your hands. You've gone from seeking to being sought, from giving to allowing. What's fascinating about this shift is how it exposes true intention. When communication stops, she must decide whether to reach back out or to let the silence continue. In that decision lies clarity. If she values what you shared, she will feel compelled to reconnect, but if not, she will reveal her detachment through inaction. Either outcome gives you truth, and truth is freedom. This transformation of dynamic is not about playing games but about restoring equilibrium. Relationships that last are built on mutual exchange, not on one-sided effort. By stepping back, you allow emotional gravity to take effect. What was once taken for granted becomes valuable again. The dynamic evolves from dependence to mutual awareness, from assumption to appreciation. You shift from being the pursuer to being the standard, and in doing so, you remind her and yourself that connection must be chosen, not chased.